It's a dynamic industry out there. News, events, personality profiles, and so much more to keep up with. Don't let events pass you by.
I don't know any nominee.
Be the one who knows. Watch entertainment news on Channels Television for the latest celebrity news, an express pass to the A-list event, a trip behind the director's camera. Yes, indeed, it's a dynamic industry out there, but we can help you keep pace. Join us. Get your swagger.
Well, welcome back. We're still with the Minister of Power, Professor Chinedu Nebo. Thank you for joining us once again.
A pleasure.
I'm concerned about the transmission of this electricity, especially to the national grid and of course, Nigerians getting the ultimate result, getting power ultimately in their homes. What is happening in this regard?
Before this administration, we had just a radial transmission infrastructure for the country. Now we have moved to closing all the loops, to making it a real national grid. That is substantial. Second, the national grid cannot reach everybody. If you look at the expanse of land in Nigeria, if you look at the settlements, the demographics of the whole country, you will see that there are areas in which you see patches of communities, 100 households, 1,000 households, 50 kilometers later, another one like that. Can you imagine the cost of putting a grid between these two? That's why we must think outside the box. That's why this administration is doing. You cannot. It's going to cost an arm and a foot to make sure that every Nigerian home is lit up. So what are we going to do? We must look for methods that will give power to people who are far-flung from the national grid. So the transmission will not be a problem there, because you will not even take that until Nigeria becomes so opulently wealthy that we can go for hundreds of kilometers without any communities and yet have transmission lines running. Yes, we will get to that, but not quite yet Uhuru. So what are we doing with that? For the transmission, remember, for 16 years, the federal government did not employ a single engineer for the whole PHCN, generation, transmission, distribution, not one. Only President Goodluck Jonathan came in, saw the need, and gave us the leverage. We've already employed, in the past 2 years, over 1,500 engineers. Now, how do you grow a sector when the engineers, the technologists, the technicians, the artisans, the craftsmen are aging and ailing, retiring and dying, and you say you have an electricity sector? In fact, I can really say that before this time, we had nothing. But when we now began and saw the enormity, the colossal nature of the need, we started developing a systematic way of meeting these needs. That's why we are where we are. Just like I said, if that bicycle spoke, no matter what you give, if you send it all out, people can only see finite improvement. But like, you can't go to Oka and tell people now that there's no improvement in electricity. They will know you're lying. You can't go to Umar here and say the same thing. You can't go to Kaduna, where they are having 22, 23 hours of electricity supply on a daily basis, and tell them there's no power improvement. There are areas that are getting this. And we are still working on making sure that, like my own street where I live in Enugu, my neighbors called me and say, Prof, how can you be minister and there is no light? The problem is that more places have been built. The transformer has been overloaded. So anytime power comes there, it trips. So what are we doing? We must put a larger transformer for the place. So quite often the problem is that we need to do a lot more work on the infrastructure, and we are doing that. For the first time in the history of this country, in the last 30 years, a substantial amount of capital is now available for the transmission of electricity, doing the infrastructure and doing it properly. And we are very happy for that. But at the distribution end, you know that these are now in the private hands. The government, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission is at their backs. You must improve, you must get more transformers, you must wire more people, you must improve electricity. But unfortunately, and we found that to be true, some of them are rejecting power allocated to them. And that's why in my meeting last month, I said that we will sanction any distribution company that rejects electricity. I'm sure some of you knew when I surprised one of the distribution companies and just invaded them and asked the question, you have power, you reject it, and people are saying there is no power. Is it not sabotage? So these are things we have to grapple with. So with transmission, we are working very hard. But then you hinted at the issue of transitional electricity market that we are right now in. You know, there is no requirement for a formal global declaration of term. When the market matures, then the minister will declare that the market has matured and so on. But what we are doing now is kicking in the contractual agreements in this transitional period to make sure that the water is tested, you know, it's just like testing of the water and so on, and that everybody is keeping to their own end of the bargain. The gas supplier is obeying the contract agreement with the GENCOs. The GENCOs are obeying the contract agreement with the gas suppliers and with the distribution companies. The distribution companies at their own end also are in agreement with the transmission companies and generation companies. So this is a time to test all this until we now begin to grow with more IPPs like Azura and so on coming on board. Many more are also coming on board, but we don't want to make a whole lot of noise about them until the groundbreaking and the actual effective construction begins. So at the end of the day, yes, we are moving. We really are taking strides. But the problem, like I told you, if you have one child, you give all you have to that child's education. You send the child to the best school. You have 2 children, not quite so. Now you have 10, you'll be lucky to have uncles and aunties that will help to take care of some of the children. You now have trickle that is going around. So no matter what you do, it's not as much as when we had much less population, much less cities to worry about, much less rural-urban drift.
The destruction of pipelines
Yes.
didn't start today, it didn't start last year, it didn't even start 2 years ago. So are you saying that there wasn't some strategy in place, you know, gradually to help this matter?
No, strategies are in place. But it wasn't the way, it wasn't as serious as it is today, to the point that many people are alluding sabotage to it. For instance, take the Escravos, you know, pipeline. How could people go underwater and take over 24 different positions and bust these things underwater? They're not getting any gas from it. They're not getting any condensate from it. Just shatter the thing. Cost the country over 1,000 megawatts. Took 8 months or so to fix. And once that is fixed, we started ramping up, got to 4,500, they hit again. During Christmas period, I'm sure everybody was happy. We hit near 4,500, they hit again. So, the fact is, you begin to ask yourself, since these people have no pecuniary reasons to bust the gas pipelines, they have pecuniary reasons to bust the oil pipeline because they bunker, they steal oil and so on. But what about the pure gas pipelines? And then when they bust the oil one, it affects the gas because it's the same mechanism that is utilized for the deployment, for the transportation. And when the condensate start building up and gets to a place and there's no more storage for this thing, they shut down the gas pipeline. So either way, power suffers. And that's why this same government has said there are many ways of skinning a cat. Don't count on gas alone. While we are working to ensure the safety and security of the gas and oil pipelines, let us find other mechanisms. That's why we are all out for coal today. We're all out for more hydros today.
While all of this is going on, which has been going on anyways over the years, Nigerians are still tasked, still being made to pay more for electricity. Why really is that?
I think we need to be realistic, and there is such a thing as comparative analysis. Nigeria still has about the lowest electricity tariffs in all of Africa. You do not sustain electricity that way. You and I know it's not possible. It's like, I don't know, sometimes I weep for my compatriots. I wish we thought through. You know, being a vice chancellor, I had a problem. Every student wanted free education at the tertiary level. How can you? You go to primary school, you pay 1.5 million for your child in special primary schools. You go to secondary school, you pay 1.2 million for your child in secondary school. They come to university, which is much more complex, much more science intensive, equipment intensive, manpower intensive, and you want to do what? Free of charge? How can we think we will grow our power sector at the minimum tariffs in the whole of Africa and one of the least in the world? But we don't want to increase tariffs until power supply to the country improves substantially. And that's why we plead with you and with all in the media, help us in this war against vandals. Today, as I'm talking to you, we can easily give most people in the country much better power supply if the vandals will give us a break. But the time it takes you to fix